It's Wednesday, which means it's another big news Wednesday with Jayar Jackson. Jayar, how's it going?
You know what? Can I be honest with you?
No.
Okay, I
Sure.
will.
A little bit. I can take a little bit of honesty today.
Only a little bit. It was going fine. And you have to sign into your Google stuff to see everything. And every once in a while, Google just signs you out after like a month and says, "Here, sign it again." And it did it. It only does it literally as things are building up on the show. As the show starts. I mean, and not just this show, main show. When I'm going into the meeting, anything I need it for, it automatically goes, "Hey, so by the way, sign back in, idiot." And screw up everything you're about to do. So that's how I'm doing.
Exactly. It's Big Disaster Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Everything's bigger, including Google's betrayal. But anyway, always glad to have you here, Jayar. Today is in fact actually a very big news Wednesday. If you consider the future of our country, the possibility of a civil war, big news, I guess. We also have a supersized big meanwhile in Wednesday. Not just with a lot of stories, not just with big stories, but with big animals, actually. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. That is gonna be closing out the show. So definitely stay tuned for that. Stick around for that. But before we get to that, we're gonna have Jon Stewart. The reception to his new show seems to be quite mixed. I haven't gotten around to watching it yet, but he did do an interview recently where it made a really good point that Fox News decided to totally like blunder into proving without meaning to. And then of course, we're gonna get into a whole bunch about democracy, whether we ever had it, whether we will. It's gonna be a lot of fun, Jayar, I think.
So it's plenty of openings for my pessimism, yes?
Oh, there's gonna be some room for some pessimism, yeah. And we get to talk about an athlete. I found a sports story for you, so you should be very excited about that too. But anyway, along the way, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, sharing the stream, that would be great. And if you want to send us any questions, comments, tweets, super chats, all that, that would be wonderful. But I'm gonna import a tradition. So we do a pre-show every day. Do you know that? If you watch it on Twitch, you might not know that. But on YouTube, you can go at about 45 minutes before the show starts. We do a little pre-show where we talk about a whole bunch of other stories and we chit chat and all that. And there's the most important story for each show. If we don't get to 1,000 likes, I just walk off set and I don't do it. That's my promise to you. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. If we don't hit 1,000 likes, I'm just gonna leave. So anyway, we're gonna see how that goes. Big walk off Wednesdays. But Jayar, with all that said, you ready to talk about some news?
I think so.
Okay, I think we should. Let's start off with this video.
Talk about cancel culture, never seem to shut the up about. Look, the internet has democratized criticism. What do we do for a living? We talk, we criticize, we postulate, we opine, we make jokes, and now other people are having their say. And that's not cancel culture, that's relentlessness.
Look, when I saw that, I thought Jon Stewart makes a great point. And by that, I mean the same thing I always do, is that he made a point that I've made. And so I really like it because it was mine and it's his too. But anyway, so basically what he's saying is a two-part thing, Jayar, and we could talk about both of these. So one is about what actual sort of philosophical merit there is to the idea of cancel culture, which the people who are worried about cancel culture, or at least want you to think they're worried about it, they are very set on you taking this seriously. It's the most important thing. And then the second thing is they sure do focus on it a lot. It's not just that they think it exists or want you to think it exists. It is like foundational, core to what they're saying. This is true for some randos. It's definitely true for some in right-wing media, as we'll see in just a little bit. What do you think about what he had to say?
Well, cancel culture is a basis in humility and whether or not you're willing to learn or fix yourself, make yourself better, progress, learn about the world, be enlightened. All these things that many times, in many cases, especially us as Americans, it's frowned upon. We grew up thinking or being told, not thinking, but being told, hey, you know what? You're lowering yourself if you listen to someone else with a different point of view. You're not standing up for your core values if you change your mind. What were your core values and what were they based on? If your core values were based on something that someone else told you to believe that you maybe don't even necessarily believe anymore, or you don't even practice when it comes to things like, say, religion, because many people say, oh, I'm a Christian, and they act nothing like Christians, but they use that as an excuse to be horrible to other people and deny their existence and things like that. So yeah, it's what he's saying is it's an exercise in having to actually listen to someone else. Having to actually pay attention to someone else's life and experiences. Because it all doesn't just resonate just from you. You're not the center of the universe. You're not everyone thinks they're the center of the universe in one way or another. And they're like, oh, how dare that just because I disparage someone and eliminate their existence, which then leads to actions where people do things like actually eliminate their existence or disparage them or in their participation in society. That's okay for you to do it. The anti-cancel culture people have been for cancel culture since the beginning of everyone else's time. And now they're finally getting some pushback and they just can't take it.
Yeah, well look, so I have a lot that I want to talk about on this, but I want to go to a super chat because I think it's actually a good question that was asked. So YT Renewed says, how do you categorize the Dixie Chicks example? That's a great question. Because the Dixie Chicks, at least for a long time, found less mainstream acceptance because they spoke out against the war in Iraq. That is definitely true. So I want to be very clear. When I say that cancel culture doesn't exist or it's a myth, I don't mean that no one has ever lost an opportunity over what they say or advocate for or whatever. What I mean is the construct that's pushed every day by the right wing and other people who knowingly or unknowingly are doing the work of the right wing, that does not exist. I am not saying that nobody has ever had consequences levied against them. I will also point out that they were canceled to the extent that they were canceled by the right, by people who are pushing for a war. So let's be very clear about that. And the modern narrative of the cancel culture does not have 1 inch of room for right-wing cancellation of people who aren't conservative. That is not a part of it by intention. It is designed in that way. And another one of the myths that I talk about a lot that I want to, I'd write a book, but it seems like a lot of work, is that nothing about this is new. The term is new, but nothing about what is actually being done is new. It is exactly the same conversation, the same social thing as the 90s conversation about political correctness, and for the exact same reasons. The reason I talk about it and want to focus on it is I want people to understand that they are being conned by those who talk about cancel culture. This construct has been created by rich people, powerful people who do not want to be criticized in any way. And I'm being very specific with my language there. They're not worried about being canceled because basically nobody ever has been. They're worried about something far less. They talk about cancellation to avoid criticism. They talk about their own free speech rights to stop you from using yours. Because as Jon Stewart points out, all of this is about people saying what they think, criticizing something they don't like. And they're told that they're against free speech when they do that. They're literally exercising their free speech rights. And on the contrary, the other people who are worried about cancel culture and are trying to stop the leftist censors are inherently telling people to not express themselves. Do not speak out about what you believe. Some people get to do that. The rich people, the elites, the wealthy, those who I'm defending, they will always have that right, and they do always have that right. After years of cancel culture, who did we get? Epstein? I think that's pretty much it. The rest of them are fine. And by the way, some people who I generally like talk about this. Dave Chappelle, I know this quote because The Hill tweeted it out 30 times. It was, if this is cancel culture, I love it. But that's kind of the point. It ain't actually cancel culture if it ain't that bad when you've been canceled. So anyway, there's a lot there, Jayar. I apologize. It's something I care a lot because the people who are pushing, like some randos, they legitimately believe it. They're wrong. They don't know that they're being conned, that they've been deputized into this culture war. But the people like Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson, all that, they know exactly what they're doing. They have a strategy. they're waging war. It's the same war as it's always been, but I want people to understand the battleground at the very least.
Yeah, as I point out, the cancel culture thing is not new, or at least someone getting blacklisted. Things like that happen in the time in industries, except they happen a lot of times people who were challenging the industry or the powerful people in charge. You bring up Dixie Chicks. That was like in 2003 or 2004.
Yeah,
there wasn't the huge. Were we even using smartphones then? I don't even think so. That kind of started on 05, 06.
That was 06, I think.
Yeah. So the whole thing with apps where you have like Instagrams and Twitters and all that stuff, where people instantly respond to what you've said and done, which is now the atmosphere that we're in, that has given platforms to people who normally don't have platforms, and regular people that can coalesce and criticize a powerful person. The powerful people are not used to being criticized. And now that they're being criticized, they can't take it. And I'm being canceled. The people in power have always had the biggest problems once they finally have to deal with the consequences of the things that they've done, that they indiscriminately have done to other folks throughout time.
Yeah.
They can implement policies or influence politicians to do horrible things to people. And as soon as people ask for something else, or demand for something else because of where they live and who they are and their place as Americans in this society, it's, oh my God, I can't believe you're coming for me. Yep. Coming for you. It's a threat to them for someone else to hold them accountable or do a small percentage of the things to them that they've always done to everyone else. They just can't take it. So now we have to do something about this.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, like I know to some extent I'm gonna repeat myself, either from earlier or from other shows, but it is not that nothing happens. The Dixie Chicks did lose out on opportunities. It was the right that did it. And sometimes maybe leftists or centrists or whatever do something that in theory causes someone to lose an opportunity. But what I'm saying is that is not cancel culture, and cancel culture does not exist because whatever is happening often does not get filed under the bucket, the heading of cancel culture. No right winger says, we really did go too far with the Dixie Chicks. We were doing a cancel culture. They don't do that. When Sean Hannity is pushing for a boycott of Keurig, that's not cancel culture. When Donald Trump is leading a nationwide campaign to primary and remove every Republican that's ever spoken out against him, that's not cancel culture. And that's not me saying that. They won't acknowledge that that's that. And that's why we have to destroy this construct. It isn't actually a problem. It isn't widespread like they talk about it. It has nothing to do with real people's problems. And it has been designed to only incorporate a critique of the left. That is literally all it is, which is why when you see leftists supporting the idea of it, it's even more distressing than the right, because we should know better. We should know how this has always been deployed against the left. And just as a general rule, if it's so bad to do this stuff, if it's cancellation to criticize Dave Chappelle or Joe Rogan or whoever, I want you to try to put yourself, and I apologize for this, in the shoes of a Ben Shapiro. And imagine, hypothetically, someone you disagree with says or does something you don't like. What does Ben Shapiro do? Does he shut up about it? Does he keep it to himself because he wouldn't want to do a cancel culture? No, you know that. Ben Shapiro criticizes them. He says stuff. Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, Donald Trump, all the Republicans, they go hard against the things they disagree with. And we get to do the exact same thing.
Yep, they're not used to that power dynamic, and they're like, wait a second, I'm supposed to be in power here. That's what it comes down to.
Exactly. And by the way, this is way less important, but the other part of his critique was that they focus so much on it. Let's talk briefly about why that is. But first, as I alluded to, Fox News is really gonna prove the point. They saw that video too, and here's how they introed their segment about it.
Former Daily Show host Jon Stewart says cancel culture isn't real. It's just a myth. No one's being canceled. Really? We've got so much to say on this. Stay with us.
Yeah, you do. I'm sure you do. You do every day, and they in fact did. They went on to talk about it, and host Harris Faulkner said, "I know some of this is performative, because if you want people to click on you, just talk about cancel culture. She was not talking about them. She was talking about him. She said he critiqued the attacks on cancel culture to be performative, to get people to click, as they launched into an expansive conversation about it again.
It was literally a teaser. It was literally a teaser. Yeah. Said, hey, you guys, hang on, watch all these ads, from our sponsors. Before we come back,
keep watching.
Stay here and keep watching, because we're gonna do something that's gonna make you really wanna watch this. Invite your friends.
Yeah. And by the way, it isn't just, so it's two things. One, it's the thing I was talking about the anti-vax content earlier this week. They need to talk about something that gets clicks, right? Because views are down, people aren't as excited about politics, so cancel culture gets people really worked up. It's that, but it's also every minute you spend talking about it, what are you not talking about? Yeah. Actual problems that actually do affect people. We have this war, it takes up people's time. That's why I'm fighting against it. But Fox News, they would say they care about the economic standing of right wingers, and yet they have never actually talked about those things. And they certainly don't want people to focus on those things. They don't want people to elect politicians based on those things. And so instead, you make it vague. You make it about the Dave Chappelle's and the Joe Rogans and all that. You get people focused on vague attacks. My rights are being taken away. What rights? Are you gonna lose like a show that you're doing at Madison Square Garden? No, that doesn't actually affect you, but they make them think that it does. And so it not only legitimizes their cultural critiques while demonizing, while banishing left-wing cultural critiques, it also gets their viewers to focus on stuff that has nothing to do with actually improving their lives. And so when you see all these right wingers having no problem with politicians like Donald Trump and Marjorie Greene, people that don't do anything to improve their standing in life, and you wonder, why don't they expect more? This is why they don't expect more. All they expect is someone who's gonna fight back against this mythological attack on their free speech rights that never actually comes. This is how it functions day by day, and you're seated on Fox News.
John, have you written a book on this yet? Because I'm sorry, bro. There's no more it's nobody's saying it this way. At least people that I've heard.
I'm sure Jon Stewart says it this way, and people a lot smarter and more articulate than me. I'm kind of inclined to do the book just so that I could try to get it out before Jank's book comes out. That would be fun. But anyway, we'll see. Any other thoughts about this though?
No, I'm
Okay, well we'll have more to say. Stay tuned after this. But anyway, no, we actually won't on this. We have other stuff that we have to talk about. We are gonna take our first break. When we come back, is it time for the US to go through a divorce? And who signed the prenup and why after this? News is so stupid. Anyway, thank you for being here, everybody. We're gonna talk about some stuff. Oh, I wanna remind you. So we have a poll, and the poll is, it has to do with the guy who got in the face of the male Karen over the leaf blowers. We showed you the video, we're not gonna show you again. Is it an acceptable response to someone interfering with your life? And is the guy even a Karen to begin with, or am I wrong about that? So you can go to tyt.com/polls and vote. Later on the show, we will have the results of that. Jayar, did you see that video?
I didn't see it. I was trying to rack my brain to see if I'd seen it. Okay, I'll look for it.
Okay, so we'll have that later on. Let's see, anyway, Kedge Dragon says, those most deserving of being canceled greatly fear it. Their fear drives them to obsess about it. Their obsession forces them to whine about it. Shunning is the most effective social coercion. I don't know, I don't know that it is, but again, you don't have, like, when you express an opposition to something someone says, you don't necessarily have to have a goal in mind. You get to express yourself. That's just a natural thing. We developed language and we shall use it. That's how that works. Yeah. Grandma Sunshine Dragon, who has been a tier 3 member for 7 months. Thank you, Grandma Sunshine Dragon, says, what's so great about Wednesday? Jayar Day with co-host Dragon Daddy. I don't like how you did that, but love you guys. Love my Dragon fam. Hugs from Grandma Sunshine Dragon. Show us some Sprocket love today, please. We'll see. We'll see if we can get that.
We'll see.
Okay, Vicky Gray sent in a big super chat. By the way, Vicky Gray, sends in a lot of big super chats. Figgy Great, don't think that I don't see you. I see you. Thank you for your massive support. Says, big news Wednesday, Jayar, Jon Stewart, let's go. Love to all from Santa blah blah. We're on fire here literally, so I would ask for your good wishes for all people, wildlife, property. Thanks. Yeah, look, partly it's on us. We haven't talked about the fires in a few weeks now. But like, just understand that everything is simultaneously flooding and on fire. Whether we talk about it or not, it is actually happening. So I apologize for that. Okay, Rhett Proctor says, what gets me is these right wingers who attack superheroes that they know nothing about. I'm pretty sure I could have schooled the guy on Laura Ingram's program last night. I know more about Batman and Superman than that guy. I would have liked to have seen it. Borg Dragon says, that's a scary dragon, says, my brother caught a breakthrough case of COVID. He's feeling fine and wrote on Facebook about it. Seeing the post, my anti-vax dad commented, quote, you should take some ivermectin. We laughed at him a lot, like a lot. I'm glad you were able to have some fun out of that. Oh God, I lost my father years ago, but if he became an anti-vaxxer, oh my God, I can't tell you how much that would distress me if one of my parents is an anti-vaxxer. I'm very lucky, I don't have any really close relatives that are that crazy. Knock on plexiglass. Anyway, Devontae says, hey John Jayar, hope all is well. Jayar, have you seen Candyman yet?
The horror movie?
Yes.
It's like from the one from 1987, no?
No, there's a new one, they remade it.
Oh,
I'm assuming no then.
No, I don't know, man. Horror movies, they're like comedies to me.
I can think of some differences between the genres, but sure.
Well, like,
I know you don't generally go and see them.
Well, they're comical, like really.
Oh, you mean you literally do laugh at them? Okay.
They're ridiculous. Okay. The premise for those are like comedy.
Okay, see The Quiet Place, that was a good one. I see some.
No, thrillers and supernatural things, those are cool. Yeah. But like some guy running around with a knife ready to slash everybody.
I think this is supernatural though. Anyway, Devontae says, as an African-American man, it spoke to me on a super deep level. If you haven't seen it, you should. So I think there's a social commentary angle.
Okay.
In any event, we'll talk more. We got more after this though. Okay, everybody, wanted to let you know a few things that are coming up. So there are two important guests appearing on the Young Turks later. So as the appetizer on the first hour, Anna Kasparian is gonna be joined by, I swear to God, Representative Ilhan Omar. How exciting is that?
Wow.
That the GOAT, like driver of the Mecca Ilhan herself, Ilhan Omar. That is at 6 p.m. Eastern time, 3 p.m. Pacific time. And then, even more importantly, in the second hour, Anna will be joined by John Iadarola, not a representative, and nobody cares. But I'll be there, so join me for the second hour anyway.
He is writing a book whining about cancel culture though.
Exactly. No, I love that Ilhan Omar's on. I don't know that she's done a TYT show before, which is like, kind of crazy and a damn shame, but anyway, she's on, so that's good. That's good. Big fan. Anyway, with that, you want to talk about some nonsense?
Oh, I'm always ready.
Let's get into some. Look, it's only the opening. The front door is nonsense. The house is a horror show. So get ready to laugh, Jayar. Okay. Marjorie Greene is apparently ready for a divorce. Not a personal thing. Who knows if that'll come? But for the whole country. Should America have a national divorce? That is what she polled her following on Twitter. And imagine if you could get her Twitter following in a room together. Damn, I wouldn't want to be in that room. But here's what they had to say. And honestly, they weren't necessarily as supportive of it as I might have expected. 43% said yes by Republican and D states. How exactly do you break that down? Is it like by presidential vote, and then we're gonna have an audit of Georgia? It would be a mess, but that's what they say. 47.5% said no, stay together, and 9.5% were undecided. By the way, in the future for Twitter polls, don't say that you're undecided. It's just a Twitter poll. Pull the trigger, man. Just come on, click on something. Seriously, it ain't that important.
I kind of don't understand any undecided. It's like if there's a poll that I'm undecided on, I just kind of don't say anything.
You just don't answer, like it's Twitter, come on. Anyway, it's not going on your permanent record. But anyway, less than half said, yes, we should split apart. But it's apparently something that she's been thinking about. She retweeted this other crazy person who had this map with national divorce is expensive, but it's worth every penny. sure. Look, we've shown you the numbers on which states give more than they get from the federal government and vice versa. We'll see how expensive it ends up being for you in the end. But Jayar, this is something that she is sort of, at least sort of implicitly encouraging since she's asking about it. But what do you think about the response? What do you think about the national divorce?
Yeah, it's we mentioned a little bit Monday, I think, on the main show. How again? You kind of touched on this. How does that work? Let's just talk just with the California recall stuff we saw. We saw how the northern parts and northeast parts of the state and all the way to the top, and even say like little counties here and there, were all very much into the recall. And then the vast majority of the rest of the state, more populated areas, were not. So like California's this blue state, everyone says, if you don't live here. There's plenty of red areas in California, there's plenty. So what happens when California is on the blue state side? And all those conservatives here are like, oh yeah, suddenly we believe in what those libs are believing in. It doesn't make much sense. And how does the division happen? How does the support for it happen? Who is fighting this whole separation and civil war and divorce that they keep talking about? It's all more of the same stuff, like you were pointing out earlier. If it doesn't really have anything to do with actually affecting your life or actually changing whatever predicament and situation you're in that your government should be a part of because you pay into it, then it's just a distraction. How does this really work? So we got people thinking about, how do we have a national divorce? Well, in the meantime, they're last night they were thinking, how do I take care of this cyst on my neck that I don't really want to go to the doctor for because they're gonna charge me up the ass for it and I have no idea what's gonna happen. You discard that to talk about the national divorce because you're mad at Joe Biden about something.
Yeah, well look, I agree, look, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. So yes, on some level, it definitely is a waste of time, but it's something that not just Marjorie Greene is thinking about. A poll conducted by the University of Virginia shows that 4 in 10 Biden supporters and 52% of Trump voters at least somewhat agree that it's time to split the country, favoring blue-red states seceding from the union. Well, what else would it be? But by the way, if we do ever set that up, I think it should be set up based upon the sort of base level understanding that I have now of how football works in the UK based on watching Ted Lasso. We should split by blue and red, but every year there should be the chance for one of the red states to be promoted to blue if they get their act together.
John,
I think that would be a good incentive for them.
Spoilers, I just started the show, bro.
That's just started the spoiler. Anyway, I want to make maybe a dumb point. I don't know, maybe a weird point. It's the reason I wanted to talk about this. And by the way, I'm going to say that I don't understand something. I do understand cynically how politicians use this, but once again, I want to talk about uneven battles. So we have right wingers who are mad at left wingers, or conservatives who are mad at Dems and think that they're ruining the country. And on the other side, you have Dems who think that right wingers are ruining the country. So if I were to list like the 10 things that I think, I would probably put it more just corporatist because Dems are doing it too, but that these people are doing that are severely hurting the country, it would be stuff like, the student debt bubble, not dealing with climate change, making healthcare impossible to achieve, not having paid family leave, not being able to afford an education in the first place, things like that. What is their actual problem with? Like, I don't worship your God, that's true, and I'm pretty okay with like a refugee from El Salvador moving in the neighborhood. That's not as bad, I don't think. Like, I know that probably makes me seem stupid and shallow, that I don't think that their concerns are as legitimate, but I really do think that it's vague, stupid BS. It's the war on Christmas, it's cancel culture. These are not, for the most part, they're not serious concerns. And it doesn't mean that those conservatives don't have serious concerns. Those serious concerns that conservatives have just have nothing to do with what politicians like Marjorie Greene talk about and try to do in office. And so if we were to split, I sort of get why some libs might want to split off. They want to finally make good on these crises. But the other side, it's like, you want to be free to I don't know, stop your wife from working, like ban interracial marriage. That sucks, man. It really sucks.
Yeah, it's based in this very primal superiority thing. All this is based in superiority and levels of society that for some reason, even folks that in many of these, conservative areas are in the bottom of, are promoting. They fooled them into thinking that, hey, if you separate in these, Texas, Alabama, whatever, separates into this conservative part of this country, this separate country called Jefferson or something, right? And then after they separate, are there no more like societal differences? Are there no more poor people? Are there no more people at the top stealing money from you? Are there no more people that are just running through the system, taking everything and then not allowing you to have any access to it? Do taxes not exist anymore? How does it work? How does the pay for work? Because the rich folks don't have to pay anything, and the poor people have to pay everything and not get anything back. Because that's what you're supporting. That's the basis for many of these economic policies for these conservative groups anyway, and conservative politicians, because they're answering to their lords, which are corporations and rich people. How does it work for you at the end once you've separated? Everybody's kings there? Because by the way, if everybody's doing great, and everybody's getting all this extra stuff, that sounds like that whole socialist agenda where everybody has something in part of the country. What do you want? What is it you want?
The thing that bothers me about what you're saying is you didn't say this, to be fair, but you implied that Marjorie Greene hasn't thought this through all the way. And I don't like that. I don't appreciate that anyway. Now here's the thing. I want to jump into a slightly different angle on this. And it is the people who are ready for this. And when I say ready, I don't mean that they're voting in polls online. I mean something else. Let's jump into this next story. I might have confused my team, sorry. There's a new thing going around. You might have seen it on TikTok. You might have seen it on Reddit. You might have seen it on your own street, depending on where in America you live. It's all black American flags. Now, if you don't know anything about this, don't get your hopes up. This has nothing to do with supporting Black Lives Matter in America or anything like that. It's something else. Trump supporters have begun to fly them in an implicit threat to harm or kill their opponents, meaning non-white people, socialists, liberals, Muslims, vaccinated people, and others deemed to be enemies of real America. We're gonna explain why that is. So don't just trust me or whatever. But I just looked around on, I live in LA, so thankfully I haven't seen one of these. I've seen a few crazy flags, thin blue line, stuff like that. I haven't seen this yet. Let's show a picture. This is outside of Denny's. When you're ready for the revolution, and a moon over my hammy at the same time. You could see one just outside of like a little house, just a little black flag, black American flag. It's fun. So what is this? Well, apparently, although some say that it actually predates the American Civil War, all the sources I saw said that one of the first times a fully blacked out American flag entered the American consciousness was during the American Civil War of 1861 to 1865. During that period, particular Confederate Army units flew the black flag to symbolize the opposite of the white flag of surrender. It means they would neither give nor accept quarter. In other words, no quarter will be given means enemy combatants would rather be killed than taken prisoner. That means there will not be any prisoners, there will not be any mercy. We believe in our cause so much that we will die for it and we will kill for it. That's it. And
sounds very American,
picked
John.
up once again.
Sounds pretty patriotic.
Confederate American, at least, yes.
Yeah, these self-proclaimed patriots love anti-American flags, don't they? The blackened out American flag, the Confederate flag, their stupid ass don't tread on me flags. They got a lot of Trump flags. They got a lot of flags that aren't American flags, but they sure talk about how much they love that American flag. You better not burn one. Don't burn one, but make it black. So replace it with the Confederate one, replace it with the Trump one. Put it on your dress, put it on your swim trunks, put it on your bikini. All those things that that are not patriotic, that you claim to be patriotic for, you use that for this degree. So everybody who wants to talk about how we got to separate and oh my God, this country's going this way and I'm ready for the fight, the Civil War. Ask them just straight up: are you willing to die? Would you die right now for Donald Trump? Are you willing to die for Donald Trump? Because that's what they're pushing you towards. Because this approach of, oh man, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna fight this war and I'm gonna kill. You think there's no casualties in this war that you're preparing for? Do you think that your AR-15 in your backyard is gonna take out the whole rest of those libs out there? Because libs don't have guns. It's constant. This constant belief that they're being fooled into thinking that they're these badasses that are really gonna take over the country. Ask them straight up, because There's those old school wars where people went into war because they were desperate and had nothing else in life, and they're looking for some kind of legacy or something to push on, or their name being something, and they're willing to go die. Are you willing to go die? Are you willing to go die? Because we're getting closer and closer to those, to what we were afraid of, is these Muslim terror groups where they're willing to die for their cause and their leader. Are you willing to be just like what you said you hated and you're afraid of?
Yeah.
Answer the question, yes or no. You want to die right now? If you die, Donald Trump gets back in office, you gonna die?
I think that there are some, and there are way more who want someone else to be that person at least. That's why they're not glorifying Ashley Babbitt because they just think the name rolls off the tongue. They're glorifying the person who will die to keep Donald Trump in office.
And they're willing to die. Now, they are willing eventually, as she was, to die for the cause. But if you ask her before that day, are you gonna die today for this guy? She'd say no.
Yeah,
but she did.
I don't know, like you made a great point, by the way, about the flags. Like, if a dude was like, man, Chevys are the best, I love Chevys. And then you look in his driveway and it's just like a bunch of Fords, there's a Mazda. Like, you'd be like, do you really love that thing that you say that you love? Because you don't act like it. You act like you like options.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So look, I looked on Reddit. I just searched for Black American flag, and what it mostly was lots of people saying, hey, so I saw this Black American flag on my street, or my dad just put up a Black American flag. It was lots of people very curious about what the hell was going on. And this is what it is. And by the way, look, some will just think that it looks cool or whatever. That's true. And you're probably gonna hear, maybe it's already happened. If not, it's gonna happen. Look at these libs. They got trolled. We didn't actually put it up because we want to kill people. We just wanted them to think that we wanted to. And I will say what I always say. Okay, that's fine, but it doesn't really mean what you think it means. If you think it's funny to pretend you want to kill your political opponents, maybe you don't want to kill your political opponents. But I wouldn't put you under the category of someone who definitely doesn't. Like, you're at least in the middle, okay? So I think it's important that people know what this is, regardless of whether any individual dude at Denny's plans on killing a congressperson. Anyway, I want to go to something slightly different. I'm gonna reset for this. The authors of a book called How Democracies Die. This is Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt. They were on CNN talking about some of what they've seen that looks like it might be leading into increased political violence and possibly more coup attempts. So I want to show you a little bit of that interview. Let's jump into that.
When we wrote How Democracies Die 4 years ago, we were worried about the Republican Party because they allowed Donald Trump to be elected. They sort of dropped the ball and failed to protect our democracy from an authoritarian demagogue. But we did not expect that the entire Republican Party would evolve into an anti-democratic force. And that's where they are today. The entire Republican Party leadership, with a small handful of exceptions, is now no longer willing to accept electoral defeat. And democracy can't survive, cannot survive, if one major party can't accept defeat, can't lose.
And look, that point that they made, that it's really about the fact that so many in the Republican Party have supported the claims of the big lie, have refused to admit what January 6th was. So few did. That is like the scariest part. It's not that there are millions of Americans willing to potentially kill someone for Trump, although I'm very worried about that. That isn't necessarily enough to overthrow democracy based on the historical analysis they've shown of democracies that have failed and those which have survived. It's when the party goes along with it. And that is very much what we've seen. And it didn't necessarily have to go that way. I will point out, as I have many times, in the initial hours of January 6th, even up to a couple days later, there were a lot of Republican elected officials who were trying to distance themselves, criticizing Donald Trump openly. And then they learned their lesson and they realized, oh, that wasn't a line that we're not supposed to cross. The base is gonna stick with him. They're not horrified by this. Well, all aboard the coup train, because I don't want to be kicked out of the party. And so Jayar, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, it's when your party is full of people who have zero principles, they'll float whatever direction that they're blown in. That's just how it is. And they're willing to follow a guy who, no matter how many discouraging facts come in his face, he pushes right through. And like, well, I guess we'll stop pushing. I think Chuck Grassley's the latest. After he had his event in Iowa, Chuck Grassley was criticizing him since before January 6th, but then specifically after January 6th. And now, he's in Iowa. I got to jump on that train because now I'm running for office. There was articles where other elected officials, other Republicans said, well, Chuck Grassley, he announced that he's running for re-election. So of course now he is switching what he's saying. Not realizing that's an open admission that as long as you're running for office, your principles don't mean anything. He had principles for a while. Now he's running for re-election. So therefore those principles have been completely flipped on their heads. Were they principles or was he just lying?
Yeah. No, there's the principle is I want to stay in power, so whatever comes. And it continues. People are talking about like all of these steps are like you might take note of some, you might ignore others, but they are a part of what potentially in future years could be a gigantic problem. And that slow motion coup is what they address in this next video.
Interesting is that there have been other events like this in other countries. France in 1934, there was an attack on the parliament. The police fought the right-wing radicals off in that case, but 6 years later, democracy died in France. And part of it was there was an investigation, there was a committee that investigated that attack, and it was highly politicized. They never really fully came to terms with it, and this was a harbinger of things to come. Spain in 1981, there was an attempted coup where soldiers came into the parliament as they were counting votes. When transitions of power are always dangerous times. And at that moment, the establishment politicians, the king of Spain stood up and said this is unacceptable, and Spanish democracy survived. So how mainstream politicians and establishment figures respond to events like this determine our fate. And right now, looking where we are compared to other countries, it's not looking very.
Yeah, I mean, nobody, like maybe a week after we wouldn't know after the 6th, but now nobody can deny that the lesson that has been learned on the right is that was not a bad thing that happened. They might not want to go on record and say, I encouraged people to go because of the immediate like legal implications of that, maybe. But they want to reassure everyone that they support that those are great people, good people, political prisoners. They've been persecuted, all of that. And that should really worry you based on the examples that they're giving.
Yeah, and and we have to see the reality of it, because after that, I think Anderson Cooper then said, that's terrifying, can't believe this. Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation on Sunday, she was talking about the reality of the plans for a potential takeover, or at least trying to subvert democracy to a degree where we at least get your one guy in power again. And she's like, oh my God. When I read that, because I think it was General Milley even said it, she said, oh my God. I was like, really? Yes. And this is where the power they have in this is continuing to make people believe that they are not really trying to do something this drastic because it hasn't happened before. It only takes one time for it to happen. How many times have a bunch of Trumpers run up into the US Capitol, broke through windows and said they're gonna kill politicians? It didn't happen before January 6th, but it happened on January 6th. So if you said it was gonna happen before January 6th, which some people did, and then we did nothing about it, it happens. So the next step, if we continue to go, hey, I'm worried about transgender bathrooms, I'm worried about making sure Dave Chappelle is protected and all this, you're not thinking about what's actually happening, the reality of actions that are happening behind all the distractions about how you're so aggrieved over these things that mean nothing, They have actual plans in place to make sure that they are never out of power, because now there's enough people that are waking up to the way that they've stayed in power. Now they need to go to the next stage.
Yeah. And think about the politicians who are gonna run and win in 2022. Think about when we hit 2024, there are gonna be tons of names that you'll have been hearing about for a year and a half. Like, we're gonna read this graphic from Madison Cawthorn. Madison Cawthorn is gonna sound like Mitch McConnell compared to the people that are gonna get elected and that you're gonna have to deal with. And they are the players that are gonna be influencing whether democracy gets to do an election in 2024. Okay, we had a lot more, but unfortunately we are running out of time. So we're gonna take our second break. Before that, I do wanna remind you, we got the poll going, tyt.com/polls, where you can go and vote on our leaf blower male Karen who stepped into a fight he was not prepared for. So we're gonna have the results of that coming up soon. But for now, short break, we'll be back after this. Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on. Kedge Dragon in the members comment says, Ulysses S. Grant predicted that the next civil war would be between patriotism and intelligence on one side and superstition, ambition, and ignorance on the other. I think you nailed it. John Bravo says, cancel culture does not exist. It is a made up term that allows Fox to complain about commercialism without actually using the word. Well, no, just again, maybe that might be a part of it. It's just, it is all about elevating what you and your side do and demonizing what the other side does, even if it's the exact same thing. It's a construct that lets you do that. They did that for 15 years with political correctness. Then people got bored with that. And now they're doing it with cancel culture. I hope that we survive the resource wars, because in 15 years, there's gonna be some other term that means the exact same thing. Now, Vicky Gray sent in another big super chat. Thank you, Vicky Gray. Says, hey, John, I give because I truly believe that TDR TYT can help to inform anti-vaxxers, Trump loyalists, and make non-compassionate people to make a change. Thank you, Vicky Gray. As always, I really do appreciate that. We are trying to do that. The whole network's trying to do that. Franklin Sharpslicer sent in, I believe, a poem saying, Wyoming blizzard coming to an end, many feet of snow, my dragon friends. I don't mind mommy nature making us stay at home. At least the craziness out there, I might enjoy being alone. Do well today. Thank you. Sorry about the blizzard. Would love to have at least a light dusting of snow here in LA. Just for like a couple hours. I don't want it to stick around. I don't have to shovel, but that would be nice.
Just go to the mountains.
Okay, Fab Dragon says they literally attacked the Dixie Chicks and told them to just play music in a misogynistic way. Good point. Yeah, by the way, when they were telling, was it LeBron, shut up and dribble?
Yeah.
Was that cancel culture? No. So then what the hell is cancel culture? They love athletes who talk about politics for certain things. Are they going to tell Kyrie Irving to shut up and dribble? They're not.
Come on, John. Come on, John.
We'll talk about it later on. And what we will do is be consistent. They can say whatever they want and we'll respond. Bada bing, bada boom. That's gonna be fun. Okay, Forrest Dudley says we'd have a massive population exodus to alternate states, almost certainly, and it's never gonna happen. Gambit says, it's my birthday and I just found out it's AOC's birthday too. Oh man, I forgot to text. I should probably get around to doing that. Anyway, no.
Text your good friend AOC, yeah.
Exactly. Okay, we have a super chat from Matcha, which I saw when it went up. Says, John, as a trans fan of your show, it greatly hurts me that your favorite comic is Chappelle, even after everything he has said, not just the latest special. I totally get what you're saying, and I thought that I made clear I hate that, not just the things he said, but what it represents. I did, and by the way, there's thousands of people attacking me like every single hour about the things that I said about him. So I get what you're saying, and I don't want you to think that it doesn't like really bother me that anyone, let alone someone with the following and influence and all that, would become so obsessed with their particular view of this commentary of this community, or their view of what comedians are supposed to do, their knee-jerk need to fight back against what they see as censorship, which is literally just criticism or asking for some understanding. So sorry for that. Okay, we only have 14 seconds. I'll say Siren has been a Twitch subscriber for 9 months. Thank you for that. Asimov's Prophet for 10. Thank you. I'll try not to pick Tucker Carlson for Garbage Person of the Week. I will try to bear that in mind. But anyway, more coming. Okay, I just saw a note from my team. We're gonna be moving on to D Block. Everyone says that we skip it, but today we're gonna actually do it. So let's jump into this. Throughout the pandemic, there has been a lot of damage done. And here on this show, we've cataloged a lot of it. I want to add one more thing to it. We talked recently about kids getting COVID, how many have been affected by it, those that have died, those that are going to experience long COVID. There's another sort of experience that kids are going to be having coming out of this pandemic. Assuming it ended today and no one else needlessly died, we didn't have another wave, you would still have more than 140,000 children that have lost a parent or caretaker as a result of it. Literally tens of thousands of additional orphans who thankfully survived, but have lost a parent, the person taking care of them, which is just devastating when you think about the long-term effect that has on that individual, on the family, just devastating. And this is, by the way, from April 1st to June 30th. So let me amend what I said earlier. If it had ended the 30th, because a lot of people have died since the 30th. That includes, by the way, custodial grandparents, grandparent caregivers, those sorts of things. It's about 1 out of every 500 children have now experienced orphanhood related to COVID-19. So you can add this to the list of things that you're not supposed to have a problem with. The most important thing is your rights to get sick and get other people sick. And if you have to produce a whole bunch of orphans, that's just how the cookie crumbles, I guess, Jayar.
And then what? And then what after this?
And then nothing. Kids? Screw them. They don't care. These pro-lifers don't care.
Because then once these whatever aged kids, it ranges, I'm sure, end up in the system maybe sometimes or in abusive situations, and their lives are upended. And then they maybe look for their country to have something to do with helping them out because they're minors. They probably get a big old FU to their face. That's just what happens. And how dare you try to suction off the system, go get a job, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But in the meantime, everything we could have done to prevent maybe as many of these deaths as possible, to keep the family unit together, because that's the basis for America. Keep that family unit together that suddenly we don't care about. When someone dies, the person that you have, that's your family unit, whatever, bootstraps.
Yep.
Maybe because they never cared about the family unit. Maybe because they only cared about certain people's family units and others. And they used the breakup of other people's family units to be another hammer and bludgeon on top of your head to tell you how much of a piece of garbage you actually are. This is how the system continually works. This is how the cycle works. And then we go, I have no idea why they're complaining. It's not like they didn't have any opportunity in this country. There's plenty of a lack of opportunity from these folks. And then again, you preventing this from happening will help them. But we don't care about helping them. We care about getting reelected and getting some level of political power. That's all the people that have decided to let this just happen this way care about.
Well, Jayar, there is actually some opportunity here. Now, 140,000 children have been given the opportunity to experience a substantially harder life, at least statistically. So let's talk about this. Apparently, losing a parent has been shown to increase a child's risk of sexual abuse, mental health problems, housing instability, and poverty. I mean, when it's literally a caregiver, like we understand why it's obviously not everybody, but why statistically it has that effect to a big community, 140,000 people. I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut. My vague memory is that Bridgeport, Connecticut had about 160,000 people. The idea that almost the entire population of the city I grew up in became orphans as a result of this is just insane. We should also point out that, as we know, the distribution of these deaths has not been even. Most recently, we've been focused on the fact that conservatives and people in conservative states are more likely to die. So that's true. But we also know that racially, especially early on, Black and brown individuals were far more likely to get COVID and thus early on to die from COVID. The poor individuals as well. So you're gonna see that too. So this is gonna interact with a lot of other inequities produced by the pandemic that we've already identified. So it's gonna be just even worse.
Yeah, and so those lists of things that happen more to children that end up in these situations: sexual abuse, mental health problems, housing instability, and poverty. Think about the programs that are put in place to probably help folks in these situations, and how certain folks and certain political officials in this country want to cut those and have been cutting those or haven't been funding them to a certain extent. Look at the fight that's happening over this human infrastructure bill with the reconciliation battle back and forth. That's why specifically, if you ask them, which parts of this bill would you like to cut out? Because they may help kids with poverty and families in poverty, housing instabilities, and we complain about homelessness all the time. That's one of the reasons people are fighting with, even locally in LA and also with the state. Oh, we have a homeless problem in the state. Why?
Yeah.
Why do we have a homeless problem in the state? What are the many reasons we have a homeless problem in the state? Are you willing to do something about it before there's more homeless people on the streets? No, they're not.
Yeah.
They're just not.
Oh God. Look, if that wasn't bad enough, we have one more quick story, another thing that should matter, that's not gonna have any effect, but let's talk about it. It's been clear in many stories that we've done here on TDR that cops can be very afraid of certain sorts of things, and they have used that fear to act out with violence, in many cases with murder. When they're scared, as they've been trained to be, they will do crazy things. And yet, not scared of the right things, doesn't seem, because new numbers show more than 460 cops have died from COVID-19 cases tied to their work since the beginning of the pandemic. Not totally independent stuff, like specifically tied to their work. In 2021 and 2020 and 2021, more than 4 times as many police officers have died from coronavirus than from gunfire. In the same period, COVID-19 was the most common cause of duty-related deaths. And we know how scared they are of being shot, what they'll do when they're scared of being shot. They're not scared of COVID, seemingly, even though it's far more likely to kill them. And why do I say that? Well, we have seen time and time again that when you have vaccine mandates, encouragement to get vaccinated in government offices, there ain't no community like the cops for being opposed to it. We're seeing, let's see, in San Jose, California, city leaders decided that as a vaccine mandate was taking effect, they'll allow unvaccinated officers to remain employed because apparently they're not complying with it. You have cops going to these town council meetings and complain about it, saying that it's a violation of their rights and they shouldn't have to do it. Where's that fear, that natural like self-preservation that we see when they pull someone over for a traffic stop, Jayar?
Yeah, they don't have it. The thing is now they're used to having this wide-ranging free motion of not having to follow any rules or orders. It's the qualified immunity line they like to push. They're used to getting away with anything. So why would they have any feelings of constraints being put upon them while they're doing their job? They have free reign. This is what we've conditioned them to believe. This is the monster that we've now created. And the LA, the chief, the LA County Sheriff Chief, Alex Villanueva, was like, I can't lose any more people because of budgetary constraints. And now if I have them do these vaccine mandates, I'm gonna lose more people because they're gonna leave. Time for a hiring spree for people who are willing to do the job is all that means. That's their choice.
Can you imagine if BLM protesters had killed 460 cops? Or if guys that got like pulled over for speeding killed 460 cops? Cops would be walking around with bazookas in full Iron Man suits of armor. But when it's COVID, they have been trained not to care about it.
Or tell them they're
trained by Tucker Carlson, Fox News.
Like there's an experimental shot that'll allow you to not be killed by these BLM protesters. They'll take it immediately.
Oh my God, they'd be pincushioned like a porcupine with that. But for this, they don't care. They don't care, and it's terrible. Needless deaths. These are actual tragedies, and they're allowed. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for our first hour. So if you've been watching on our linear platforms, thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate your support. If you're watching on the members app, Twitch or YouTube, we have a lot more to get to, including Kyrie Irving, who is expressing himself, and meanwhile in all that and more coming up right after this. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the show. John Iadarola, Jayar Jackson. Big News Wednesdays. Jayar, thank you for being here.
Great.
A couple things. Always good to have you here. I wanted to cover a couple things before we get back into the news. One, someone asked where they could get this shirt, the drink water and don't be racist. It's not a Shop TYT thing. It's actually sold at AOC's campaign store. And coincidentally, it's her birthday. So give yourself an AOC birthday present by going there and getting one of these. I really like it anyway. Okay, also, we have the poll results. So the guy was filming, went up to these guys who were blowing leaves, got in their face, and then the guy with the leaf blower was not having it, took off his shirt, got in his face, chased him away, and the other guy ran. It was very funny. We polled you, is this an acceptable response to a male Karen getting in your face? And here are the responses. Yes, got 82% of the vote. No, was it a little bit more than 8%? But even that was beaten by this guy isn't even a Karen at 10% of the vote. And I gotta say, I respect that. I don't necessarily agree. I think that he became a Karen when he turned on his camera before having what could have just been a little interaction. But I like that we're having that conversation. We're trying to see where the definition lies. But overall, apparently you all think that, yeah, take off your shirt, get in their face. So that is how I'm gonna deal with all of my problems from now on. Anyway, let's see. Victoria Bone, thank you for becoming a tier 1 member over on YouTube. Much appreciated. Dragonheart in the super chat said, a friend of mine in Florida said, because the Republicans don't play fair, we should change our party to Republicans so we can vote in primaries. Interesting thought. It is, and look, people have done that for a very long time. For me, that's too much work, but I get what you're saying. And more likely, the more common thing is they recruit a third party candidate and then only support them to take away votes from the other side. So we see that a lot too. Okay, over on Twitch, the Evil Wolf gifted 10 tier 1 subs and became a member for 17 months in a row. Says, I heard this is where you go if you want to make Cenk eat something spicy. Is that a thing? Is that a thing we're doing? Okay, cool. I like it. Well, thank you for being here. Vladiv gave 10 subs as well. Thank you. Tony Starks hit 17 months. Says, sup John, sup Jayar, sup Dragon Fam, sup Tony Starks. Thank you for being here. 17 months. I also saw Robo Blake hit 18 months. Got a black badge for it too. That's awesome. 18 months is a good long time. Congrats on surviving that long with American news. Stars View, thank you for those 5 subs as well. Okay, more to come on that, but Jerry, you ready for this?
Let's do it.
Anyway, okay, let's talk about some sports. Yeah, I can just launch into it if you want. Yeah, okay. Conservatives have found a new sports hero, and it's the Brooklyn Nets point guard and apparently reported flat earther Kyrie Irving was suspended by his team Tuesday afternoon after his continued refusal to abide by an NBA-wide COVID-19 vaccine mandate. This was announced by the general manager for the Brooklyn Nets, Sean Marks, who said Kyrie has made a personal choice and we respect his individual right to choose. Currently, the choice restricts his ability to be a full-time member of the team, and we will not permit any member of our team to participate with part-time availability. It is imperative that we continue to build chemistry as a team and remain true to our long-established values of togetherness and sacrifice. Now, lest you believe that Kyrie Irving being willing to be suspended for not complying with the vaccine mandate means that he's anti-vax, his team wants you to know that that's not the case, although he specifically isn't saying this. So he apparently, according to multiple sources, he's not anti-vaccine. His stance is that he's upset about people losing their jobs due to vaccine mandates. To him, this is about a grander fight than the one on the court, and Irving is challenging a perceived control of society and people's livelihood. By the way, he had COVID during last NBA season, but I don't know if he got the vaccine, but he apparently is not anti-vax. He just believes that if you are, that's totally fine and it's important and all that. Jayar, this is a sports story. I chose it for you, bud. So what do you think about this?
Well, one of the big deals about this is because Kyrie Irving is arguably the best point guard in the league. He's on a team that is expected to win the NBA championship, partially because he's on that team and they've got other superstars they've all collected together to the point where people thought it was unfair. So this is the team that we're dealing with. And Yeah, like you mentioned, he's been in the spotlight before for potential conspiracy theories, the flat earthness and all that stuff. So it kind of sets up this scenario for him to easily be, oh, of course, Kyrie Irving's an anti-vaxxer, right? But so this denial that he is, it kind of doesn't matter. But this is just the basis for your decision, your beliefs, and what you're standing for. A lot of people stand for things, and after they stand for it, they go on with whatever careers and life experiences they choose to have. Kyrie Irving's a multimillionaire. He doesn't have to play basketball. If he doesn't play basketball anymore, it hurts me as a fan that wants to see him play basketball. And I can get over that because it's his choice. If you don't want to participate, you don't have to participate. Barry Sanders in the NFL, he retired early. I didn't like that because Barry Sanders, in my opinion, was one of the most dynamic running backs of all time. I was like, damn, Barry Sanders retired. He retired because he wanted to, and I don't hold it against him. I just disappointed I don't get to see him play anymore. If Kyrie Irving wants to do the same thing for another reason, that's up to him. I'm not mad at Kyrie Irving at all. A lot of people are upset at Kyrie Irving and call him an idiot and a loser. You can have those beliefs. I think he's wrong on some of the things that he's trying to stand for. That's not my business. Kyrie Irving doesn't want to play basketball anymore because this is more important to him. He said that. The quote said that. This is bigger than basketball. Fine. What are we upset about? It's bigger than basketball. To Colin Kaepernick, standing up against social injustice and police brutality was bigger than football. Fine. Yeah. I wasn't mad at Colin Kaepernick. I was supportive of his stance, and I knew he was never going to play again. Consequences for your stance. That's all.
That's true. Look, I agree with all of what you said, especially the in-depth sports stuff that I know about and agree with. Nas Custodimus says Barry was one average season away from breaking the rushing record that hit me hard. That seems true. Anyway, yes, no, you're totally right. Yeah, you can do that stuff if you want to. If you want to make it bigger and you like, let's keep it real. I don't care what he believes. I didn't know that he existed before yesterday. He believes crazy stuff about the vaccine. I'm just gonna go out there and say that. I can be wrong. If I'm proven wrong, then that's fine. But I believe that's probably what's going on. But that said, he was told you have to have the vaccine to be able to play because we've done this before without the vaccine and it still spread disease. So if you don't comply with that, you can't play. I'm assuming this is the only thing like that. So let's test this, Jayar. If you refuse to wear clothes, can you still play in the NBA? Can you just do whatever you want?
Can't do it.
Could I use a hockey stick?
Yeah.
In the NBA if I wanted to play with that? No. Okay. Well, if I think it's more important, then I can just quit and stick with my hockey stick, I guess. You can do all that. But the only other point I want to make about this is that they are very excited about this on the right. Again, remember, this is the side that wanted, oh my God, I'm
LeBron James.
Blanking on LeBron James to shut up and dribble. Athletes should not get involved in politics. And certainly Colin Kaepernick should not have done any protests whatsoever. Donald Trump Jr. tweeted, Kyrie just sacrificed more than Kaepernick ever did. Look, even if we're totally getting rid of our consideration of the merit of what they're doing, that's objectively not true. Kyrie Irving is suspended. He can come back at any time. How is that the same thing? And Candace Owens says, are any one of his teammates going to take a stance against this blatant discrimination? And the reason that she wrote it about it that way, that it's blatant discrimination rather than he knew what the rules were and won't comply with it, is she wants to make it seem as if it's a race thing. She doesn't want you to care about race for all of your social issues, but for this, which is about vaccines, she wants you to think about it through racial discrimination terms. Jayar.
It's so, this is one of those times when you have to look at where you've aligned. So as Kyrie Irving, I'm not sure what his political beliefs are, where he aligns with as far as conservatism, libs, but many people have this support for people that want to, buck the system and the vaccine mandates and all that stuff. And if you find yourself aligned with people like Donald Trump Jr. and Candace Owens, just understand the company that you're now in.
Yeah.
Because no one said, hey, you're being like Donald Trump Jr. and Candace Owens. They said you're being like Donald Trump Jr. and Candace Owens. Those two said that. So there's no aspersions on your character and saying you're just like them. They say you're just like them. This is your group now. If you don't like that, you should probably rethink where you stand. Sometimes if you look around and be like, I'm surrounded by a-holes. You just might be one of them too. Just as a matter of fact of having to gauge from some self-awareness, because we all have issues sometimes with our own self-awareness and what we've been doing, who we've been around. Just look around.
You're totally. It's just like what we were saying about a recent controversy about a stand-up comedian. I don't remember who, but they said something, and our point was, every once in a while, take a look at who really likes the thing that you're saying. I'm not saying that should be the only thing that you consider, but maybe look into who likes the thing that you're saying and doing, and consider based on that.
And the way that they pushed back on you before was based nothing in the arguments that you had, but based in who you are. The shut up and dribbles, you're just an overpaid basketball player. All those disparaging things that have nothing to do with your point, but now they're all on board. It's
so let's test it. Let's test it. Kyrie Irving should come out and say, I'm doing this because of the vaccine thing and also because Black Lives Matter. And we'll see how much they're inviting him on Fox News if that's what he's advocating for. I think that would be a great test. Anyway, with that, we are running dreadfully low on time and we got a lot of animal news to get to. So are we ready to jump into this, Marissa? We are? Okay, let's do it. It's time for news from around the world in Meanwhile in. Meanwhile, in Argentina, there are, it says rodents in my document, that seems disparaging, capybaras, the size of St. Bernards that have been swarming an exclusive gated community. They can reach up to 140 pounds. So basically a guinea pig, but the size of Beethoven from those movies that many of you probably never saw. Anyway, they've got teeth like a beaver, an insatiable appetite, although thankfully not for human flesh yet. And they make a big poops. That's what I'm gonna say. They make a very big poops. And so if you live in one of these exclusive gated communities, the combination of the massive appetite and the pooping in your area is probably not your favorite thing. There's apparently record numbers of them. They're chewing on their lawns, getting in fights with pets and things like that. They knocked a food delivery worker off of a motorcycle. That's actually a little bit scary there at that point. Anyway, there's I have to read this because it's my favorite sentence I've ever read. This is from Gustavo Iglesias, a 62-year-old real estate broker and longtime resident of this area. Says, I'm not anti-capybara. I want to scratch their cute little bellies as much as anyone else. The problem is that their population is out of control and people are too scared to do anything. No one wants to look like they're opposed to nature. And in particular, they don't want to look like they're opposed to capybaras. Can we go to the picture as we talk about this? They're just a delight, capybaras. I follow Capybara a Day on Twitter, I do. What do you think about this, Jayar?
Well, first of all, I follow Possum a Day on Twitter, and that's far cuter. But still, the capybara, I'm on board. This is the thing. Maybe it's happening in Argentina. Maybe if it happened in like Florida, people would probably start domesticating these damn things. It's just the way it works. Hand the problem over to Florida, they'll make sure that they're pets in no time. Start stealing the babies, and you domesticate them, and now we've got capybaras living side by side with golden retrievers. Isn't it a beautiful thing?
I think you're close. I have a feeling that if capybaras flooded into Florida, gated community or not, 1 week later, you would have so many stands popping up to sell chicken fried capybara. That's what I think is most likely to happen. Anyway, residents in the area have formed these WhatsApp chat groups. One is pro capybara, one is anti capybara. And as we've been saying recently, look around the room you're in and ask yourself if you want to be a part of that room. Do you want to be a part of the anti-capybara room?
No, not at all. They're cute. And by the way, it's happening around here too. I'm on those next door neighbor apps, and people are complaining about the coyotes that are running around. Just yesterday, I saw someone, they had a baby one, and he took a picture of it. He goes, I've had him for a few weeks. He's getting big so fast. That's what people do, bro. We're getting too many coyotes around. People are gonna start taking them into their house.
I got here a couple days ago and there was a skunk right out front. It was adorable. Follow Skunk a Day on Twitter. Anyway, meanwhile in. Meanwhile, in far more serious news, in Gaza, the lack of access to drinking water, and even when access is there, for many, lack of access to clean drinking water is slowly poisoning Palestinians. The water crisis affects every one of the coastal enclave's 2 million inhabitants. Many people in Gaza must resort to buying their drinking water from private suppliers, as municipal tap water often does not work because of long power outages, which we've talked about previously, and is usually too salty to drink, even when it does. An individual at one of the refugee camps says that residents have access to municipal water only about 3 times per week, and sometimes it comes mixed with sewage because treatment facilities aren't able to cope. Now understand all of that about the lack of access to power to let those systems function and the treatment facilities for the water. These are not new problems. The problems already existed. And then you also had the massive bombing of Gaza that happened not long ago. 290 water supply facilities, including the sole desalination plant in northern Gaza, were damaged during the attack and are in urgent need of repair. Sewage networks were also destroyed, flooding streets with dirty water. And apparently up to 50% of Gaza's children currently suffer from infections spread by contaminated water. So it's been a bit since those attacks, but the problems continue.
Yeah, if you have this information and you're able to do it on the show now, do you think the authorities there don't have this information or know all this that's going on? They know and they don't care. It's the actionable aggression. So we talk about the action aggression, the missiles and the rockets that get launched and the back and forth and oh my God, this person got murdered and they blew up that whole wedding party, which is horrible things. Then it continues on with these subtle aggressions that just slowly continues to kill people or destroy their lives to a degree that pushes them up against the wall. So when people do push back, it's can you believe these radical people keep fighting for their lives? Except before their lives part is left off. They just keep fighting because they hate us. That's the narrative we'll go with because that's the kind of things that we say. That's why it works out for them because the most powerful will continue to suppress the least powerful.
100%. And by the way, as people are noting in the chat right now, we have they're not the same problems, not the same scale. But look, we treat our people just as poorly in some parts of America.
Absolutely.
Look, in some places you have perfectly good access to drinking water. It's always there. It's perfectly fine. In others, like we were talking about yesterday, as contaminated with lead, if not more so than Flint at the height of the water crisis, years after we knew about the water crisis. And so, problems in both. Okay, meanwhile in. I'm incredibly confused. I apologize, Marissa. I'm not following you. But anyway, meanwhile in Singapore, they've deployed robots to help take a look at what people are doing, try to get people to act the way that they might want. They have these patrol robots that blast warnings at people engaging in quote unquote undesirable social behavior, adding to an arsenal of surveillance technology already existing in the tightly controlled city state that is fueling privacy concerns. And I can sort of understand why you would have those concerns. So some of the things that the robots are wandering around and looking out for include smoking in prohibited areas, improperly parking bicycles, and breaching coronavirus social distancing rules. I don't want people to do that, but the improperly parking your bicycle and you got like BB-8 is all up in your ear over it. I don't think that. Back off, C-3PO. I'll put it on the rack. That seems like a bridge too far.
They got to keep things too far. They got to keep things structured in this country to make sure things work out the right way. This is the beginnings, bro. I'm telling you, every robot story I see, I'm paying attention because I did watch iRobot and I do know the dangers of what we're seeing in the future. Will Smith was right. Was right.
He was right, and that was a great movie. I watched it recently, and it doesn't hold up as well as I would have hoped that it does. In fact, but it's a good movie either way. Reboot that and just cast him again. He can be older, more grizzled. Anyway, meanwhile in the Red Sea, there you go. There's a rotting oil tanker that might cause a disaster for the region that could leave up to 8 million people without access to water. Can you tell we like water here on the show? Here's a picture of it. And you take a look at this picture and you might think, well, that's sort of weird. It's like something out of a movie. It's been there for years. We don't know what might happen. Well, what happens is incredibly important because negotiations are currently underway to offload an estimated 1.1 million barrels of crude oil that remain on the boat. They've been deteriorating by the month since 2017. For 4 years, it's just been sitting there, rotting, overseen by a skeleton crew or even less. And that's dangerous because look, if you want the specifics of how it works out in terms of the equipment on these boats, it's all available for you. But there's a lot of systems that need to be maintained that could potentially create an explosion, literally one. Some are comparing it to the conditions in the dockside warehouse in Beirut that exploded a year ago. They're saying this is in function a bomb that could go off. And if it does, it's gonna spread over 1 million barrels of oil, 4 times the oil released by the Exxon Valdez back in 1989 could be spilled, ruining fisheries and access to clean water for millions of people, including Yemen, the people in the world least positioned to survive a threat to their water supply.
Well, that's how it works. The least powerful end up in these types of positions. Now, by the way, it's got 1.1 million barrels of oil on this abandoned, I guess, this abandoned tanker. I thought the oil was this enriched product that we need so much of immediately. Why is it been sitting there for 4 years? Apparently we didn't need it because 1.1 million barrels of it had just been chilling in the middle of the ocean. Because that makes sense. I must be missing something. There has to be an explanation as to why this 1.1 million barrels of oil was just unnecessary. We don't need it.
I don't know initially why it was scaled. I know that access to it has been difficult for the past few years because there are pirates in the region. One of the concerns actually is that there are floating mines in the region as well. There's concern that it could potentially impact the ship as well. So it's complicated. They're doing negotiations, but if it explodes, if it releases that water, that is absolutely devastating. Unfortunately though, that is all that. Sorry, what's that?
Nothing, I'm done.
Okay, I apologize. We're out of time, Jayar. This was such a big news Wednesday that we barely have time at the end of it. But as always, thank you for joining us.
Good times.
Everyone follow Jayar on Twitter. Thank you for being here. We got a big old day coming up. Anna Kasparian is gonna be speaking with Representative Ilhan Omar. I'm gonna be watching in the wings jealous. And then I'm gonna be joining her. I think it's gonna be just as fun, but you let me know afterward. And anyway, that's it for now. But thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.